We're recording.
We're recording. All right. I am up for this.
All right, here we go. My name is Shilah Roethel. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Simply Earth. And today we are doing an interview with Mitzi Perdue. We're very, very excited to have her do this interview with us. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you do, who you are? Let everybody know what's going on in your world.
I would absolutely love to. First of all, I'm a fan of essential oils, and boy, it took me a while to find Simply Earth, but now that I have, I'll never go anyplace else. You guys are better. And I know you didn't expect that I would say that, but there it is. Okay, I am Mitzi Perdue. I'm the founder and president of Win This Fight, which is an anti-trafficking organization. And our particular specialty is we raise funds for other anti-trafficking organizations. And we also raise awareness. And something that I'm kind of proud of right now, I've been on close to, I think it's approaching 130 podcasts.
Yeah.
Talking about human trafficking. And I've also written, I've lost track, but I think it's something like 80 articles. So I'm in there doing everything I can to raise funds and to raise awareness.
Yeah, I've listened to about 50 of your podcasts so far. I've listened to them to and from work. Yeah, they're very, very, you're very informative. And also, it sounds like every podcaster that interviews you just loves you, which is exciting.
It's very exciting. Undeserved, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
So yeah, I have some questions for you. So how did you first get involved with wanting to fight the injustice of human trafficking? Where did that kind of idea come to you? You can tell me, what age or just kind of how that idea came to you, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, I have to confess, I'm something of a newbie in this.
Sure.
It began just about 2 years ago. It was 2:00, March 11th of 2019. And I heard a lecture on human trafficking. And before that, the words human trafficking just didn't mean anything to me. I mean, they were just, it didn't have a deep resonance for me until I heard a lecture in which I saw images, as in photographs, of little girls 10 to 12 years old who had been raped 10 to 20 times a night, and learning that their life expectancy was less than 7 years, and that unless they were rescued, here's what fate held in store for them. They were going to be either die of overdose or suicide or disease, or worst, I don't know if that's worst of all, because everything's so worst. I don't know if you can even judge it anymore, but murdered for organ harvesting.
Yeah.
And then I learned some more, and this is from the United Nations, that good Lord, there are more than 40 million people who are human slaves today, and about 8 million who are sex trafficked. And of those 8 million who are sex trafficked, 1 million of them are children. And it's just, when I heard this, it's just the worst evil I'd ever heard of in my life. And I'm 79 right now. I was 77 then. I decided I want to spend the rest of my life doing everything I possibly can to fight this. But then in thinking, how do I fight this?
Sure.
I'm not going to be somebody who can rescue kids. I'm not somebody who would have the talents and the knowledge to help with rehabilitation. But I thought what my strong suit is fundraising and awareness raising.
Yeah, you definitely have a pull in the world, celebrities, people that are business owners and places like that. So you are a very, very good person to advocate for something like this. Another thing that people do not usually take to heart when they think of human trafficking is the after effects of how these women or children how they are interacting in our community. So they get rescued, and then what? So, I mean, PTSD and just all the crazy things that come with that, people don't think of that. They just think, okay, let's get these women out, let's get these children out. But then what? There is not a lot of organizations out there that are helping rehabilitate these women.
Yeah, and I'm quite involved with. I'm even on the board of one of them.
Okay.
It's Project Safe House.
Okay, sure.
But
I've heard of them.
oh, they're so fabulous. I love them dearly because here's one of the terrifying statistics about trafficking. On average, one person in 100 will be rescued. The others are just kind of invisible. Nobody ever knows about them. They live and then they die. So 1 in 100 chances of getting rescued. But if you are rescued, unless you have supportive help, the overwhelming odds are is that in a fairly short time you'll be right back to being trafficked again. I mean, you need to develop a lot of skills that you probably didn't learn if you were trafficked, including if you began being trafficked as a child, and age 12 is a pretty typical age for a child to start. I mean, they've missed out on their education. They've missed out on socializing. They've just missed out on what's going on in the world. And on top of that, they've got health problems and psychological problems. So it's absolutely essential to have aftercare. And allow me to boast, permission to boast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, one of the things that we're doing that I'm particularly proud of is we're starting the equivalent of a scholarship program. That's in quotes, scholarship,
Sure.
in which we raise money. We find out from different organizations what it costs to have a girl or a boy, or a man and or a woman, but very typically it's, I would say probably maybe 70% of the time it's likely to be a girl. So let's talk about girls. What does it cost if you say are Project Safe House and you've got residential care for, and let's call her Josie.
Sure.
And Josie, she's been in it for a few years, so she's 15 years old. And I'm making this up. It's a composite, but it's realistic. So Josie's 15 years old. She's been trafficked since she was 12. By divine good luck, she's now in aftercare at Project Safe House. She's going to get psychological counseling. She's going to get medical care. She's going to get trauma-informed care with people who understand PTSD. But then she's going to get an education. She's going to see role models of people who are making it. And well, I've been describing Project Safe House, but I can't give you statistics for that. But I can give you statistics for something called Restore, which does somewhat similar things. And Josie, if she goes through the Restore project, and that's a New York-based organization that helps people who've been trafficked, if she goes through that program, she's not only going to get an education and all the other things she needs, but she's going to get job training. And Restore counts it as a success if Josie, maybe a few years from now, she has her GED, she can apply for a job, she's had job training, she just knows so much. I mean, she knows how to dress for it. She's probably going to work at the top of her abilities. And she may even go on to college or graduate school. There are cases where this happens. But in the case of Josie, they count her a success in the Restore program if she has a job and she has a place to live. And you need the job to have the place to live because you've got to pay the rent. They have just, they're very big on tracking the results. And like a 95% success rate for the people who've gone through the whole program.
Wow.
And then something else that I found astonishing, I never would have imagined this, but people who have been through these trainings, another one that I admire no end is GEMS, which is Girls Engaged in Mentoring. I think I've got the name right. GEMS for sure, not positive I got the acronym just right. But these are programs where people, I've met them, people who've been out of the life for 10 or 12 years. And, they no longer identify as, oh, I was a traffic victim. No, I'm an administrative assistant now, or I teach music, or, their identity, they have something pretty close to a normal life.
Sure.
It's not completely normal, but hey, they're self-supporting. People that I've met are happy. In fact, there's one woman whom my son has dated. She's been out probably 20 years.
Okay.
She has an absolutely glorious career as a stand-up comic.
That's fun.
And I know her pretty well because, well, I just got to know her because of her relationship with my son.
Sure.
And, I don't think you can ever say a completely normal life, but boy, it's from my point of view, it's so close I can't tell the difference.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm so happy that you
yeah,
get to
and
see those kind of
oh,
stories.
but this is what I wouldn't have predicted. I would think you've been up against something so traumatic that how do you ever recover? But the heavenly news is you can be restored, rehabilitated. I'm not sure even what the correct word is, but where you have a life that's close to normal.
Sure.
Including dating, marrying, having children, taking care of them well, being a good parent.
Yeah. It's a long road for them once they get rescued, but it's very, very exciting that there are organizations and people out there that are willing to take the time and also fund these organizations.
Yeah, and I was just talking with a businessman yesterday who says he wants to use his own money to support a woman who's from Restore, and I think that's $15,000.
That's crazy, and that is so exciting. Yeah,
I
I personally do jail ministry on Thursday nights where I'll go into the jail and do Bible study with the ladies. And we have a lot of different people from different walks of life that are coming to these Bible studies. And I can be honest when I say this, at least 50% of these women have either been trafficked, they've been in prostitution, they've been strippers at different nightclubs and things like that. And a lot of them will get out, get released, and then come back because they just don't have structure in their life and they don't have people that believe in them enough to, get them out of those situations. So I personally have seen a lot of these kind of stories and things like that as well. I do see some really awesome success stories where I'll see them in the community or I'll see them at church or things like that. So it is very rewarding, but also it can be a bit traumatizing myself having to see them come in and out and hear their stories. But
one of the sources I have visited probably I guess it's 5 different jails or prisons. And here's something that I learned that's just so distressing, which is, let's say Josie, maybe she escapes somehow or she's rescued, but she doesn't go to an aftercare project.
Mm-hmm.
She goes she goes into jail. And then when she comes out, she probably has gone into jail because maybe shoplifting or, in one way or another breaking the law because she doesn't have the skills to survive on her own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she's back in jail. Or maybe she's in jail for the first time. When she comes out, at least in some prisons, there's perfectly likely to be a trafficker who
picks her up.
Well, who has an inside pipeline to know, hey, there's a young woman who's coming out. So Josie comes out, and she's bewildered. She doesn't have the life skills that you need to make it. And on top of that, she's a convicted felon. It's hard for her to get a property, to rent an apartment. Yeah. And it's really hard to get a job, partly because she doesn't have the skills, but partly because she's a convicted felon. I want to see if I have to answer the doorbell. I don't. Yay. So there she is, absolutely bewildered. What am I going to do? And this nice, kindly, probably good-looking fellow who says, "Oh, I bet you could use some help. Would you like a nice, hot, warm meal? Would you like a place to stay?" And then she's trafficked again.
Yeah, it's a repetitive cycle, but it is there's news at the end of the tunnel for people like you that are starting organizations that can help these women. There isn't enough people like you out there right now.
However, allow me to tell a story since you teach Bible studies. It comes from Mother Teresa. And actually, it's a story that kind of guides my life. I mean, I'm not going to be Mother Teresa, but I think the principles that she has are very inspirational. And here's the story that inspired me. I read a biography of hers, and I don't know how widely known her story is, but she started out as a teacher in a very elite girls' school in India, and she was teaching the daughters of the rich and famous of India, the high society. She had a pretty good life, clean clothes, plenty of food, respect. But and by the way, I do believe it was a cloistered convent where she was doing this teaching. Well, but nevertheless, she could see the lepers who were dying in the street, and she felt, I need to do something for people who need it more than these girls who are, the girls she was teaching, who are probably going to have a pretty good life anyway. And so she petitioned to the superior, because with a vow of obedience, she couldn't just go out on her own and do it. And the superior told her, nope, stay in the convent. And she's saying, why? This is not where I'm most needed. And the superior told her, there's something like 10,000 lepers a day who die in this area. You can't make any difference whatsoever. So don't even try, stay in the convent. And her answer to him was, it's immoral to be discouraged by the magnitude of a problem. The good that we can do, we must do. Is that inspirational?
Very, very well put. Yes.
I mean, I memorized it because I thought, I'm always sort of casting around for role models and for inspiration. And sure. I thought, I don't know any better than that. The good that we can do, we must do. And it's immoral to be discouraged by the magnitude of a problem.
That is an amazing thing to live by.
And by the way, I'm not saying that I succeed. There's that famous saying, man's reach exceeds man's grasp. I mean, you can try for something and not achieve it, but sure. Let's try anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing to live by.
And then can I add a PS to that story?
Absolutely.
Okay, her life was, it's close to unimaginable for somebody like me, but here's from reading, I've read a couple of biographies of her, and here's kind of what I got out of it. With her vow of poverty, the only physical possessions that she owned were her sari, a cotton sari, made by lepers, by the way. But she owned personally 3 saris and the sandals on her feet, and that's the beginning and the end of her personal possessions. When she's treating the sick and dying, I've been a volunteer for hospice for years, and okay. When somebody's at the very end, it's in a way it's beautiful, but it's also extraordinarily distressing. I mean, they're sick, they smell, and I've done that a few times, but that was what she did every single day, the sick and the dying, whether it was AIDS or leprosy or whatever. And so, poverty, the word that comes to me, because I guess it impressed me probably too much, but smell, agony, just everything that sounds difficult. So how did she describe her life when, and by the way, when she wasn't being a public figure, and this is a direct quote, she ate the bread of the poor, which meant if they're eating, just really humble food, that's what she ate.
It's so crazy.
Okay, but I have a lesson that I drew from all of this, which is towards the end of her days, she told one of her biographies, one of her biographers, looking back on her life of service, she said, "My life has been a feast of unending joy."
Oh, she's so sweet.
but I think there's just unimaginable fulfillment in service.
Yep, I agree. And I think that's why a lot of people do it. A lot of like I personally went on a mission trip to Haiti thinking,
Yes.
oh, this is going to be great. And, I'm going to help them so much. And I was humbled more than I think I was helpful, honestly, just seeing how they live and how happy they are. They have nothing. They're living in huts. They're drinking rainwater and they're just so happy. And I think I got more out of that trip than I did help.
Oh, I admire you for doing that, and I sort of grasp the lesson there, uh, which is, I mean, if they've got a life of gratitude, I don't think happiness comes from money. I think it comes
No,
from something deeper.
I agree 100%.
Oh, which reminds me of a quote from my late husband, Frank Perdue, the
Oh,
chicken.
yay.
Uh, this is from he wrote something called an ethical will, and in
Okay,
his ethical will, this was ideas that he wanted or values that he wanted to leave to those who came after him, because
sure.
he knew he was going to leave material possessions, but the number of very wealthy and very unhappy people is just endless. And he wanted his children to have a chance at happiness. He wanted them at the end of their lives to look back in their lives and think, hey, I led a good life.
Sure.
I mean, well, that's got to be one of the greatest gifts in the world. Well, I think it's number 7 in his ethical will is, if you want to be happy, think what you can do for somebody else. If you want
Oh,
to be,
that's so amazing.
but there's the second part to it is, if you want to be happy, think what you can do for somebody else. If you really want to be miserable, think what's owed to you.
That's amazing. And that should be written on a plaque and put in somebody's office like myself.
Oh, well, his ethical will, it was so wise that I believe that there were probably 1,000 business schools that asked me for permission. Actually, there's a council of business schools or whatever it was, but asked me for permission to reproduce it and hang it in brass on
Yeah.
walls. So yeah, it was very wise. He was a very wise guy.
I've listened to a lot, like I said in the beginning, a few of your podcasts, like probably about 50. And just, he was just amazing. Like just my favorite one was when you were talking about hosting his workers, and you said that you would host them for like 3 months in a row to make sure that every single person was able to make a meal with him, and how special he made everybody feel. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Well, I'd absolutely adore to. I grew up in the hospitality industry. My father was the president and co-founder of the Sheraton hotel chain. So I grew up in the hospitality industry, and I grew up with just, I don't know, in my genes or something, with the idea that being hospitable is just a really good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when Frank and I first married, I mean, I don't think we've been married more than 10 days. When I suddenly burst forth with this idea, I said, Franklin, I think we should entertain every single person who works for the company. And he said, that's completely impractical. There's 16,000. This was back in 1988. It's 20,000 now. But anyway,
Sure.
he was saying 16,000, we can't possibly do that. And I sort of pretended that I didn't process that he was saying no. And I said, I think we could have them 100 at a time. No, that's way too many. And then I said, I bet we could start in 6 weeks. No, that's way too soon. But as we talked about it more and more, he went from just complete skepticism to maybe there's something to it, till finally, yeah, I like it. And that meant that 6 weeks from then, we did entertaining people 100 at a time, often 3 times a month for the next 17 years. And would have, it could be the truckers, the maintenance people, the veterinarians, the accountants, the secretary or administrative assistants, just everybody. And at these evenings, Frank, here he is, head of a Fortune 500 size company, a really big deal, famous throughout
Yeah.
the world. And there he is, standing behind the buffet table, waiting on his employees. Cool?
Yeah. That is very humbling.
And then at the end of the evening, he'd tell what was going on in the company. So, whatever role you had in the company, he was explaining sort of the big picture and how you fit in it, which I think has to mean a lot to somebody, that the head of, the person whose name is on his paycheck or her paycheck, to have the head of the company tell them the real inside stuff and what's going on. And then he'd take questions. And then at the very end, he'd, in different words each time, he'd say the equivalent of, I know the company wouldn't be what it is today without you. Thank you.
Wow. How empowering for that employee to be able to sit in his house and just hear that. My bosses are amazing here and they are just really great to us, but that would be very special.
It's something, anybody who's head of a company, have your employees over. Yeah. Wait on them. Tell them how important they are. Because I've been to funerals where the next of kin would tell me the most meaningful thing in the deceased's life was being invited for dinner at the big boss's home. So it didn't take a lot of effort. It took no effort for me because I love doing this. I mean, I would pay people to let me do it. So, it was no sacrifice on my part, but the dividends were extraordinary because it really was. Well, Frank always felt that making people feel important was just all important. And there's a quote that I memorized from William James, a psychiatrist from 120 years ago. And William James said, "The deepest principle of human nature is the craving for appreciation." And this is a way of showing appreciation to people.
Yeah, that's top of the line for showing appreciation for sure.
Yeah, and something, it's not terribly expensive. And it does take some time, but since it's very enjoyable time, why not do it?
Yeah, and you get to know your employees a little bit better and you get to see what they go through on a daily struggle or a monthly struggle, which is also very important as a business owner. I've learned talking to my bosses, it's two brothers that own our company. And they work with us one-on-one. I mean, we're nowhere near as big as the Perdue Farms is, obviously, but they are working with us every single day. My boss is 2 offices down from me right now, and he just explains every day that working side by side with your employees and knowing what they're going through is super beneficial to making your business grow.
Well, I always used to ask both my father and my late husband, how did you grow your companies? Because when father started the Sheraton hotel chain, he didn't have any hotels and he didn't have any employees. And yet he grew it. This is in the 1930s, at the height of the Great Depression, by the way. He grew his company from literally nothing to 20,000 employees and 400 hotels. And Frank Perdue grew the company from no employees to, at the time of his death, like my father, 20,000 employees. So I was forever asking both of them, how did you do it? And in the case of Frank, I actually got to watch. But in the case of my father, I'd ask. And he had a number of factors that he'd tell at different times. But the overall one of that both my father and my husband would say in different words, but it's this: the success of the company at every level depends on the people who work there. So, that raises the great big question. Well, how do you get people so engaged, so caring, that they'll go the extra mile and they'll stay with you for life? Well, that's what both men mastered.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting because you were involved with both. You're the daughter of the founder of the Sheraton Hotel, and also now you're the wife of the guy that started Perdue Farms. You had to have had a huge impact on both of their lives.
Probably more on Frank because, by the time I came along, Sheraton I'm trying to think if I had I think I had a minor influence because of I would talk with my father, and uh, it's I had a summer job working for the hotel chain when I was 15,
Okay. What
and
did you do?
I was a file clerk for credit cards.
Okay.
And actually, it was a hugely beneficial thing for me because I'd been an average student up until then. Uh,
Okay.
but seeing how absolutely boring filing was for me, filing credit cards, I just made up my mind forevermore. I'm going to get an A every single test I ever take the rest of my life because I want a different kind of job. But there was so much to be learned from that experience, including I was bored out of my mind and I hated it. Uh, but the first week I was there, everybody was talking about Alicia, and we miss Alicia so much. It turns out that Alicia at 65 had retired.
Okay.
But a couple of weeks later, Alicia shows up. She's back at work. And so I'm kind of curious, why did you come back? You have a good retirement. And actually, because of, I don't know exactly why this was so, but it was so. Maybe it's taxes or retirement pay or who knows what. But
Sure.
it was almost costing her money to come back. Um, anyway, so it was, I mean, I was told that for some complicated reason it was costing her money to come back.
Sure.
But she said, I miss filing so much. I miss my little friends, the credit cards. And that taught me that something that I'd hate, somebody else could love. And that was kind of instructive that, how different we all are.
Everybody's wired a little different.
Yeah, but that somebody would want to come back from a nice retirement to file credit cards. But
I'm sure working for your dad had something to play into that too.
Huh. Well,
I have a few more questions for you. So tying this kind of all in together with Win This Fight, what is your role in your organization, and what does a regular day for Mitzi Perdue look like?
Well, it means usually I'm up around 5:30. I really like to be at my desk by, showered and whatever else, by 6:30. And
Okay.
I'm a big believer in exercise. So somewhere around 11 or 12, I want to go out for a sort of mini run. I mean, it's an old lady run, but I'm out in the air getting sunshine.
Sure.
And I try to quit by 8 p.m.
Okay.
Partly because I'm winding down, but partly because I want to have some kind of life, like being able to watch YouTube or whatever. And I'm very typically asleep by 10.
Okay. That's a long day for you, especially being you're supposed to be retired, Mitzi.
I'm 79 and about to be 80 and very happy with it. Actually, I have more energy than ever.
Yeah. Yep. That's amazing. A lot of people are starting to slow down by about 65. So you are doing amazing.
Well, I have a joke answer to that comment, which is, well, eat more chicken.
There you go. Everybody can always use more chicken in their lives. It's very good for you.
All right. That's a sort of joking comment.
Yeah.
I've been experimenting with the keto diet.
Okay.
And I feel more energy than ever.
Sure.
I've been sort of off and on for like a year or two, but I feel that I accomplished more and have more pep than I did 10 years ago. So I don't want to be a doctor and recommend anything to anybody, but if they're looking for an energy source, look it up on YouTube and see what you think. Yeah,
my mom does the keto diet as well.
Yeah?
For about 2 years now, she's been pretty good with it. She does sometimes, like our wedding in a couple months, she's going to have to eat some cake. So she does go off of it a little bit once in a while, but for the most part,
so do I. Now,
she's been strict.
Excuse me, you.
Oh, you can go.
Okay. My theory is I don't want my diet theories to interrupt or to interfere with my social life. So,
Sure.
boy, if I'm at my daughter's wedding, I don't have a daughter. If I were at a granddaughter's wedding, count on me to eat the cake. Uh, but I figure if you're healthy 80% of the time, and I actually try for 95% of the time,
Sure.
uh, you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect.
So your
Major
mother is having a good experience with it.
Yeah, she really likes it. She is pretty tiny already, but she did lose, I think, about 30 pounds overall.
Yikes. Yikes.
And she's
And
just healthier.
yeah, I'm not doing it for weight loss, although I have an endless terror of gaining weight. But what I really do is this is too far away from the question you were asking, but
That's okay.
I'll quickly get into it and then get out of it. Uh, the keto diet for me, I love it because I don't have an afternoon slump anymore. Uh,
Yeah,
my energy is pretty much constant.
that's great. Yeah, that's amazing because you need it with the amount of work that you're doing. The other question I had were if you had any major breakthroughs or victories you've seen in your organization, either this year or this month. And I know you kind of shared some personal stories already, but if you had one personal story that is your all-time favorite.
Uh, okay, breakthroughs that have happened, they just keep cascading in
I
on
know there's a
me.
ton.
Yeah, one of them, which I would love our audience to know about, is May 11th. There's going to be a Fulbright. You've heard of Fulbright scholars? They're
I Yes, I have.
all right. There's somewhere around 50 or 60,000 of them who are still living, who are graduates of the program. It began in I think 1940. They're
Okay.
having a Fulbright forum, which I suggested, on human trafficking, and it's 60,000 Fulbrighters or 50,000 or whatever the number is are going to be invited. But on top of that, something called the C-Suite Network admires the idea of spreading the word about human trafficking, and they're using their list of 350,000 people, and then the financial institution UBS is sponsoring it, and I don't know how many people are on their mailing list, but I know that they have the biggest group of billionaires of any financial institution, of all the financial institutions put together. And
Sure.
the premise of this May 11th one, and the reason that people who care about trafficking might want to tune in, I've come across a way, I'm a writer and I interview
Yep.
people, and I came across an idea that I proposed to Fulbright and some of the anti-trafficking organizations like Polaris. And I don't want to take more credit for this than I deserve because I'm spreading an idea. I didn't invent it. Uh, that human trafficking is a $150 billion a year industry. That means that they're in banks a whole lot. I mean, you can't have $150 billion without just incredibly vast money flows.
Sure.
There are laws that allow governments, particularly banks, to seize hot money. And now, to my knowledge, I mean, there are a few anti-trafficking organizations that are starting this. Polaris is one, where instead of rescue or rehabilitation, what about taking the profit motive out of it so that you
Mm,
prevent it to begin with? Because say you're a trafficker and you have 10 million stashed away in some secret bank account in the Cayman Islands or who knows what.
mm-hmm.
But people who have dark web, artificial intelligence, just the highest of high tech, can follow the money flows,
Mm-hmm.
prove to the bank that this is illegal, that this is hot money, and the
And
bank,
freeze it.
yeah, if the bank wants to stay in business and if they don't want an insane reputational hit, they're going to
Yeah.
freeze it. So what if we made trafficking less profitable? And that's going to be the discussion. There will be 4 world experts on tracking money flows and in respect to human trafficking and what needs to be done, what voters can ask their congressman for.
Sure.
Yeah, the hope is, and to me, that's just a spectacular breakthrough. Then
Yeah.
another breakthrough that I'm hugely excited about is Psychology Today. I haven't started, but one of the editors of Psychology Today says that she likes my material and would I like to blog for them. And they have a social media reach of 10 million people.
Oh my goodness. Mitzi, that's amazing. And that
Yeah,
is
but that's
right up
not,
your alley.
yeah. And then the final thing is EarthX TV. There's a guy in Texas named Trammell Crow who cares deeply about the environment.
Okay.
I was a television hostess for 8 years, hostess and producer, and he had seen some of my work. I suppose the podcasts that you've seen, and I'm going to be hosting 6 programs, and if it goes well, more that will go to global television. And so, my mission to spread awareness, darn, it's falling in place.
That is so amazing. You'll have to let me know when those air. I need to watch them.
Yes, but I won't keep it secret from my friends. But I particularly hope that all our audience will. Well, maybe I can tell them how to get hold of me, and that way they'll
Yeah.
they'll
That
get.
was my last final question for you is where do you want to direct our audience to go to? How can they get involved? How can they help you
Wait,
or your organization?
Just a second. Do you know what? I've got to hang up right now
That's
because
fine.
they can get hold of me at winthisfight.org and go to the contacts. And unfortunately, there's something, kind of an emergency that's come up, and I got to hang up.
No problem, Mitzi. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.